Hello everyone, this is Vivek Singh. I'm working as a senior solution specialist with Informatica. In this session, we will talk about how to configure Microsoft Power BI Scanner in EDC. Microsoft Power BI Scanner is a standard scanner and it can be configured in Advanced Scanner or Metadata Scanner UI. Please note in EDC 10.5.2, Advanced Scanner has been renamed to Metadata Scanner. Before we start Microsoft Power BI Metadata Scan configuration in Advanced Scanner UI in EDC, there are few prerequisites which need to be fulfilled. EDC uses Microsoft provided REST API to connect to Azure and extract the metadata from Power BI platform. To connect to the Power BI platform using the REST API, there are two methods. The first one is to use the service principal authentication method, and the second one is to use administrator user role privileges. In both the ways, before we use it, we need to make some configuration changes in the Power BI side or in the Microsoft Azure side. We need to grant the required privileges for service principal or for the administrator user, and then we can start configuring in the Advanced Scanner UI. So for both the options, we'll discuss what are the privileges required, where exactly we need to make the changes in the Microsoft Azure side in detail in the next slide. The second option is we can use already extracted metadata file in EDC, right? So in case if you have already extracted the metadata from the Microsoft Power BI, let's say using any third-party tool, say Postman, right? The metadata extracted will be in JSON file, and that JSON file we can give in the Advanced Scanner UI, and Advanced Scanner can read that JSON file and push the metadata into the catalog. Now, before using any of these methods, the one requirement is that you should refresh the datasets in Microsoft Power BI side. If you don't refresh it, you may face certain challenges, certain error messages when you scan it. So it's better to refresh the dataset at Power BI side after making all the permission related changes. So the first method which we are going to talk about is to use service principal to extract metadata from Microsoft Power BI using the REST API provided by the Microsoft. Now, to enable the service principal, there are certain steps, and those steps we will be following up, right, to configure the service principal account. So the very first step is to enable the service principal, and after enabling the service principal, we need to enable preview feature for the organization in the tenant setting in Microsoft Power BI side. And before I jump into the Azure dashboard and start making the changes, we need to remember that we will be needing three details if we are using service principal. We will be needing the API tenant ID, client secret, and client ID. So when we make changes for the service principal in Microsoft Azure side, we need to note down all these three details, as these three details will be needed to configure in Advanced Scanner UI. So I have logged into Microsoft Azure dashboard, and here I am going to use service principal, right? So I will be doing configuration for service principal. Once you have logged into the Microsoft Azure dashboard, the very first step is to create one app. So for that, click on the app registrations, and here click on new registration. Here you need to give name of your app, and then you can select the options, right? The account type which is needed, right? So you can select any of these options, either single tenant or multi-tenant, and then you can click on the register. I have already created an app. So I have created an app with name Informatica underscore EDC. Once you create your app, the details will look something similar to this. After creating the app, the next step which we need to perform is to set the API privileges. So for that, left side, you can see API permissions. Click on that, and then you can click on this plus icon to add permissions. So if you click on the plus icon, it will list down bunch of options, and here we need to add the required permissions. So we will be selecting Microsoft Power BI service from here, and then we'll be adding the required privileges. So what are all the privileges we require for the service principal? Those are listed here. So I have already added. So from the from the Power BI service, right, we will be needing all these privileges. So these are the app.read privileges, capacity.read, dashboard.read, dataflow.read, dataset.read, report.read, and workspace.read, right? And all these privileges should be of type delegated. Along with that, you also need to select user.read privileges, which will be under Microsoft Graph permission type. So all these privileges you need to select, and the type should be delegated. Once we have selected all the privileges, the next step is to click on certificate and secrets. So once you click on certificate and secret, you can click on add a new client secret, and here we need to give name of a client secret, and we can select the expiry timeline from here. I have created one app secret with the name for Power BI Cloud, and I have selected the timeline as 24 months. It will give you a client secret, right? So the client secret will be listed here. So once you create the secret key, that time the secret value will be present visible to the administrator, and once we have saved it, the secret value will be shown just like this. So after that you will not be able to retrieve. So when you are creating the secret, just note down the secret value, as this will be needed. Once we have done with all these three steps, the next thing which we need to do is we need to note down all of the required details. So what details will be needing? We will be needing the client ID. So client ID, you can get it from the overview page of the application which we just created. So from here, get the client ID, get the tenant ID, and secret key, which we need to get it from the certificate and secret, and the secret key which you have created from there, copy the secret key. So these three information which we need to copy before we move to the next step. Once we have created this app, right, once we have registered this app and assigned the required app privileges, the next step is to create a group. So for that, left side you can see one option called group. Click on that and add a group. So for that, click on new group, give name of the group, and select the security type. So either you can choose security or you can choose Microsoft 365. In my case, I have created a group with group type as a security. So I have created a group with name EDC underscore group. Once we create the group, we need to add member to this particular group. So for that, EDC underscore group is the group which I am having. Open that group, and after opening the group, left side you can see the options like members, owners, all these details, right? So click on the members, and from here we need to click on the add member, and we need to add the application which we created in the previous step. I have already added that application here, and you can see the application is nothing but the service principal which we created. Once we have performed all these three steps, we are done with the service principal creation here. Now we will jump into the Microsoft Power BI to grant the required permission from the Power BI side for this service principal user. So jump into the Power BI dashboard and go to the settings, and in the settings go to the admin portal. In the admin portal, click on tenant setting and scroll down. Under admin API setting, we can see three options. The first option is allow service principal to use read only Power BI admin APIs. Expand that, and we need to enable this option. And after enabling this option, we need to choose the specific security group, and here we need to choose the group which we created in the previous step in Microsoft Azure side. So it will be the same group which we created in the Microsoft Azure side where we added the service principal. So that group we need to select and click on the apply. The next option is enhance admin API response with a detailed metadata. So we need to enable this option, and this option needs to be enabled for entire organization. So enable and check the entire organization option and apply this setting. Third option is enhance admin API response with DEX and mashup expression. We need to enable this option for the entire organization and apply this option. After enabling all three options, the next step is to refresh the data set for the workspaces which we are going to scan. So I'm going to scan only one workspace as part of this demo. So I'll do it manually. So I'll go to the workspace and then I'll refresh all the data sets inside this workspace. So let me go to the data set, and I can refresh all the data sets manually here. To update the data sets in bulk, you can use the Microsoft provided API. So here all of my data sets are refreshed. For using the service principal to extract metadata from Microsoft Power BI in Advanced Scanner UI, all the configuration which we needed, we have performed, right? And we needed these three information like the API tenant ID, the client secret, and client ID. All these three details we have already noted. So now we can go to the Advanced Scanner or Metadex UI and we can start configuring. But before going to the Advanced Scanner UI and start configuring, let's discuss the second option also. So the second option was to use the administrator user role to extract the metadata. So you need to use either service principal or administrator user, any of these two, right, based on your organization need. But let's discuss what exactly you need in case if you want to configure the administrator user role for extracting the metadata. So for that, the very first requirement is that the user which you are going to use, right, to extract the metadata, that should be having any of these two privileges. User should be having either Microsoft 365 Global Administrator privileges, or it should be having my Power BI Service Administrator privileges. So any of these two privileges will be needed, right, for the user. And Along with that, user needs to be added as administrator at each workspace level to which we are going to scan. So if we are going to scan 100 workspaces, the user should be having administrator privileges to each workspace, right? And after performing these two prerequisites, we need to note down the API user password, right? And the API client ID. So your user and password will be nothing but the user which we are going to use, right? So that user email and its password, and client ID where we'll be getting that, I can show you in the next step. To configure a user as a Microsoft Power BI administrator user, log into the Microsoft Azure directory and click on the users. From here, select the user to which we want to configure as a Microsoft Power BI administrator. So I will be using EDC underscore QA user. Click on that and it will open its profile. Now click on the assign roles, and from here we can click on add assignment to add the required roles to this user. So as I told you in the previous slide that we will need to assign any of these two roles to the user, right? So here I have assigned Power BI administrator role to this particular user. After assigning this role, the next step is to go to the Power BI and add this user as administrator user to each workspace which we want to scan. So I'm going to scan only one workspace. The name is GCS underscore hypercare. From here, add the user as an administrator user. So I have added EDC underscore QA user as an administrator user. In this approach, also, we need to refresh the data sets for each workspace which we are going to scan. So here I can select the data sets, right? And I'm going to manually refresh all these 4 data sets. You can use the Microsoft provided API to refresh the data sets in bulk. So all of the data sets are refreshed now. API user and password is nothing but the user email and the password of the user, which we have just configured as the administrator user. Now, to get the client ID, what we need to do is we need to go to the Azure dashboard. In the Azure dashboard, we need to create one native application, and that application ID will be treated as a client ID for this administrator user. So for that, go to the app registrations, and from here, like in the whatever we have done in the previous step, similarly we need to add a new app here. But this time, this app should be a native app, right? So here in my case, I have added a native app called Power BI underscore EDC underscore native. So if I click on that, from here I can get the client ID. So this client ID we will be using when we are using administrator user to extract the metadata. Now, if you notice the difference between these two applications, this application is not having any certificate or secret ID. Instead, this is having one public client redirect URL, and these are the URLs which we have provided. So you need to create a native application, and in that native application, we need to add these two URLs in order for this application to work for the Microsoft administrator user. After performing all these steps, now we are ready to use either service principal or administrator user to extract metadata from Microsoft Power BI in Advanced Scanner or Metadex Scanner UI in EDC. I have logged into EDC Metadex or Advanced Scanner UI, and here I have created a configuration with the name Power BI underscore EDC, right? And from the conversion path, I have selected Microsoft Power BI to EDC. On this page, there are few mandatory details which we need to provide. So the very first thing is we need to provide details related to Microsoft Power BI Reader. And here in the Reader mode, we need to select which method we want to use to extract the metadata from Power BI. So either we can use admin user, or we can use the service principal. File method, we will leave it for now and we will discuss it later. So first, I will be using service principal to extract the metadata. So after selecting service principal, if you see, 3 mandatory details which we need to provide is tenant ID, client secret, and client ID. And these 3 details we have already noted when we were configuring service principal in Microsoft Azure page. Thing which we need to provide is extractor filter. So here we need to provide the filter. Basically, we want to filter out which all the workspaces or which all the dashboards or reports which we want to extract from the Microsoft Power BI. So the details are provided here. Either we can provide include filter or exclude filter, and the format should be this one. So like include colon, then the name of the workspace, colon name of the report, right? So in my case, I want to extract all the reports and dashboards which are part of GCS underscore hypercare workspace. So I have provided the filter in this way. The next mandatory detail is to provide enterprise data catalog related detail. So once the metadata is extracted and Metadex or advanced scanner is able to process everything, how it should be loaded into EDC catalog. So either we can use file, right? We can just generate the file, or we want to load into catalog using the REST API. So usually we select the REST API, and after selecting the REST API, the EDC URL user and the password will be auto populated from the global variable, right? And we need to provide the name of the resource. So with this name, a resource will be created in catalog UI. And here we need to provide directory where all of the output files will be generated as part of this right. There are other options, like we can enable the auto connection assignment, right? We can also enable the track source changes, and we can enable the in-app visualization. So basically, after enabling this option, we should be able to see the lineage in this particular UI itself, right? So all these options we can enable it, and then we need to save it. We can also, if you notice, right now we have selected only the basic mode. We can also go with the advanced and expert mode, and here few other options will be visible. Like if I select the expert mode and if I go to the Microsoft Power BI reader, you can see I can see bunch of other options, right? So one option, useful option, is basically include personal workspaces. So by default this options will be unchecked, which means if you have any personal workspaces in Power BI, those will be excluded as part of metadata extraction. If you want to include them, you can check this option. We can also put a filter to extract the workspaces for a certain after a certain time period. So by default, it pulls all the workspaces which are modified in last 30 days. If you want to restrict it to 15 days or a week, right, we can provide the date here, and based on that it will be restricting the workspace extraction. So I'll go with the basic mode for now, and then we can save this. Once we have saved the configuration, we can hit the run button and the metadata extraction will start. We can monitor the progress from this UI itself. The job execution is successfully completed, and here we can see the status. If we hover the mouse, we can see it is completed, right? There were total 10 objects, and it is completed with 5 successful and 5 with warnings. Now we can click on the generated object, right? And from here we can we can see all the objects which are fetched from Power BI. So here we can see all of the objects, right? We can click on any of these objects and we can see the lineage here itself. We can log into the catalog UI and see if it has created a resource with the same name and if all of the lineages are visible there. But before going there, we we need to log into the catalog administrator and do the connection assignment. So from the manage page, click on the connection assignment, and here, since we have selected auto connection assignment, so under auto connection assignment we can see Power BI underscore EDC resource, right? And here we can do the all of the connection assignment. So after doing all of the connection assignment, we can go back to the catalog, and here we can see the same resource, and we can see the details here, like it has pulled 4 reports, 1 workspace, right? 4 dashboard, 4 data set, and 4 tiles. Now if I go to any report here, so here I can see the lineage and impact, right, for this particular report. So if you see here, this particular report, so Power BI underscore EDC is the name of the resource, and inside that we have GCS underscore hypercare as a workspace, and inside that we have Superstore sales dashboard, right? Inside dashboard we are having few tiles here. So all the tiles are listed here, and we have another dashboard with the name HR Analytics dashboard. Inside that we have these many tiles here. So these dashboards are built on top of report, and that report is listed here. So it is built on top of Superstore sales on Snowflake report, and that report is connected to a data set, and that data set is listed here. And this data set is getting data from one of the Snowflake resource, and that Snowflake resource is listed here, right? And in this Snowflake resource, these are all the tables, and this Snowflake is getting data from the Oracle resource, and this Oracle resource is getting data from the file server. So all the complete lineage is visible here, right? Now if you see, specifically for the Power BI, right here we can see the data set it has listed. So if I click on the data set, on this next page, I can click on this plus icon, right, and it will list down all of the fields which are present inside the data set. So you can see from the superstore underscore customer table, right, city column is there, customer ID column is there, so all and similarly for the superstore order table, these are the columns. So inside this particular Power BI data set, what are all the fields or attribute present, those will be listed here. Now if you notice here, we are able to see the field related information in the data set, but in the report, right, in this report, if you click on the plus icon, we will not be able to see anything because this is a restriction from the Power BI side. So in the REST API, we do not get field level information from the reports, and that's why we are not able to see field level information for this report, but we are able to see the field level information for the data set. So basically, whatever information is returned by the Microsoft provided REST API, all those details will be visible in EDC. And if something is not supported in the Microsoft provided REST API itself, if some information are not present in from the API side itself, then those will not be visible in the EDC. So if we are not able to see any information in the catalog UI, the very first thing which we need to do as part of debug, we need to check the response which we have received from the REST API. And to do so, the REST API response is stored in a JSON file. So Power BI JSON file will be present in Advanced Scanner Workspace, Cache, Power BI Cloud folder with the name Power BI Cloud.json. So for any debugging purpose, if something we are not able to see in the catalog UI, we can open this file and search for that particular workspace and see if the required information is present or extracted or not. If that is not present in this particular JSON file, then it will not be visible in the Advanced Scanner or Catalog UI. The second method was to use Microsoft Power BI Administrator user to extract the metadata. So for that, in the reader mode, we need to select admin user instead of service principal, and then we need to provide the username and password of the administrator user along with the client ID. So this client ID will be nothing but the ID of the native application which we created in the previous step. Rest all steps will be same, right? We don't need to change anything. So after providing these three details, save it, and then we can hit the run button, and the metadata extraction will start automatically. The job execution is successfully completed, and here also with the administrator account also we can see it is successfully completed with 5 successful objects and 5 objects which are having few warnings, which we can ignore for now. Another method to configure Power BI Advanced Scanner is in case if you have used any third party client tool, let's say Postman, right, to extract metadata from the Power BI. And if you want to use the extracted metadata, the advanced scanner, you can do that also. So let's say you have already extracted the metadata in a JSON file. So we can point advanced scanner to that particular JSON file, and advanced scanner will read the JSON file, all of the metadata from that JSON file. Instead of directly hitting the REST API, it will process it and it will push the graphs into the catalog UI. So how to do that? A sample KB has been provided where we have explained what are the APIs, the Microsoft provide APIs which you can use to extract the metadata using Postman, right? And you can generate the JSON file. Once you got the JSON file, you need to upload that JSON file onto the Informatica server where you have hosted Advanced Scanner or Metadata Scanner. Once you have uploaded the JSON file, then log into the Advanced Scanner UI and go to the Microsoft Power BI Reader. And from here, instead of admin user, select files. Now, if you select files, you will see the only option which you are getting is to provide the input file, and here you need to provide the location of the Power BI Cloud JSON file, right? And rest all configuration will remain as it is, and click on the save button, and then you can run this resource. You can use this method in cases where you don't want to allow advanced scanner to hit the Power BI REST API directly. Instead, you got the metadata extracted into the JSON file already, and you want to use it, right? So in those cases, you can use it. And when we are providing the file directly to the advanced scanner, the processing will be much faster because we are not hitting the REST API. Instead, we are directly reading the file and doing the processing. So the processing will be much faster in this case. All the documentation links and KBs which are relevant to this session is provided in this PPT. You can also check the description of the video. We would love to hear from you on any of these Informatica channels. Thank you.